Did you get the chance to tell your parents how you really felt about them? Obviously, you're brilliant at doing this with other
yes.
people. Yeah.
Oh, yes, definitely. And I had some conversations, some deep conversations with my dad in the last few months, and certainly let him know how appreciative I was of him, of the attention he paid to me. He knew that, but it never hurts to make it explicit. Tammy also, when we knew that Dad was dying, Tammy also, I mean, I've known my wife since she was 7, and she knew my father very well. We lived across the street, and she always admired him. And one of the things she pointed out about both our parents, or both our fathers, which is very interesting, is that they were both very positive about our relationship. Like, we were friends when we were kids, and my dad loved Tammy, and her dad really cared for me, and he was this noisy foghorn leghorn character who was bigger than life, and he was bombastic and booming and terrified everyone, but he really liked me, and he always treated me great. And one of the consequences of that was we knew that they both smiled on our friendship and then our marriage, and that was a huge benefit too. And so Tammy was very grateful for that and let me know about that, and I told my father that very shortly before he died. You know, one of the things I did, Pierce, that maybe the people who are listening would be interested in is, like, probably 15 years ago, I counted all the times I would see my parents before they died. And it was about 15 times at that point, because I saw them about twice a year or something like that, because we live quite distant. I phoned them and so on. But, you know, it's very useful to take stock and to understand that, you know, as your parents age, the number of times that you see them decreases very dramatically. And you need to know that, because then you don't waste the time when you have it. And I don't think we wasted the time that we had together. I took my mother to Australia on the tour with me, and to Iceland, and she had a very good adventure, and I spent a lot of time with my dad. So neither my sister, my brother, and I, we didn't come to the end of our parents' lives with regrets, thank God.
Yeah. Obviously, you've just written a whole book about the Bible, about God, about all of this. When I finished it, I couldn't work out whether you actually believe in God, whether you think there is, personally think there is, for example, a heaven. You've obviously had to give this, through the death of your parents, a lot of thought, I would imagine. What is the reality? I mean, do you believe there is do you believe in God? Do you think there is a heaven? Is that where you think they've gone to?
You know, Pierce, I would say that I leave the things that are beyond my comprehension outside the realm of my comprehension, and I try to understand what I can understand. I certainly believe that we can produce hell on earth, and we have in many ways. I've certainly had experiences that indicated to me that the reestablishment of the Garden of Eden on earth is a possibility, and that you can live like that. How those things are related to what's eternal is beyond me. I think, like, it's beyond everyone. And I believe that with sufficient faith that you walk with God through the valley of the shadow of death. I think that's true. I think that if you're courageous and you confront the worst life has to offer, that the spirit of your ancestors walks with you. What that means in the final analysis with regards to the relationship between the finite and the eternal, I don't know. I don't know. I can feel eternity touching the mundane life in the confines of my own life, and I try to make that welcome, and that works. Everything else that I think I've written or spoken about, and there's nothing hidden, you know. I'm trying to take people along my own explorations and discovery, and sharing what I've come to understand. I can tell you, with regards to studying the biblical texts, that the more I study them, the more they reveal. That seems inexhaustible, and it's been unbelievably useful. Like, writing this book was ridiculously useful. I learned so much. I'm still adjusting to the things that I've learned. And I certainly do believe as well that it's by no means chance that the most functional societies in the world are predicated upon the biblical text. That's not, that there's a direct causal relationship there.
Did writing the book,
not least because the...
just on that.
Go ahead.
Did the book give you a greater sense of faith? I mean, did it make you, in a way, more religious as you read more and more and dissected text after text after text?
Yeah, well, I do believe, like I said, I do believe that, and I think all the clinical evidence points to this. The more forthrightly you confront the challenges of life, the more powerful the spirit that abides with you. And I think you can make a very strong biological case for that. The biological case is, well, obviously, you're going to make what's within you more manifest psychophysiologically in precise proportion to your willingness to voluntarily take on the burdens of life. Like, obviously, if you shrink away from things, you're not going to adapt and adjust to them. And so if you confront them with faith and hope, then why wouldn't that put you in a position where the best of you is brought to bear on the challenges of the situation? And why wouldn't that be identical to the spirit of the most profound spirit of your illustrious ancestors? Can't see how that cannot be true. And, you know, what's the relationship between the core of the human spirit and the nature of reality itself? Well, there's some relationship, obviously. What's that relationship in its totality? Well, I don't think that's not within, what would you say? That's not within the realm of the graspable, but we can make approximations to it.
Christianity Today reviewed your book and said, Christian readers should learn from Peterson's boldness, his disposition of awe, and docility before the sacred page. However, the question of God is unavoidable. Peterson is slippery on this point. Familiar words from Christian doctrine like creation and redemption and resurrection mean something altogether different when Peterson uses them. They're kind of suggesting that you go right to the point of saying you believe in God and that you're a fully paid up God believer, if you like, for want of a better phrase, but you don't quite cross that line. Is that where you are? I mean, if you say you've had a sort of...
Well, no, I don't think so. I think the first thing I would say is that, no, there's a continual insistence in the biblical text that God is outside of understanding, outside of our understanding, right? So whatever God is beyond the categories, even of real and unreal. And that's not my interpretation of the text. I mean, even Moses only gets a glimpse of God's back. And so we have to always remember that we're talking about something that in the final analysis we don't understand. But then I would also say, I don't believe that belief means what most people think when they say belief. For me, religious belief isn't propositional, it's existential. And, you know, we talked about the great adventure, let's say, that Trump and his weird team of X-Men and Avengers are embarking upon. And I would say their faith is manifest in the pattern of their action and not in what they say. And I think that religious faith in the most fundamental sense is the willingness to hoist your cross joyfully as you trudge uphill. And that's not the same thing as declaiming about what you assume propositionally to be true. And, you know, Christ in the Gospels says, not all those who say, Lord, Lord, will enter the kingdom of heaven. It's like belief is a very complicated issue. And I think the best way that you infer your knowledge about someone's belief is watching how they conduct themselves, not what they say. The Pharisees in the gospel text proclaim their belief constantly, but they're the ones who crucify Christ. And that's something to think about.
You got into this with Richard Dawkins. It was a fascinating exchange. I want to just play a little mashup from that encounter.
You either believe that the world of truth is unified in the final analysis, or you don't.
The facts that I care about are the facts that are true and have evidence. Did they exist or did they not exist?
Well, I'm speaking allegorically there within the confines of the text.
What makes you think the writers of Genesis were a great writer? I mean, who were they? We know nothing about them.
I think that there's a spirit of literary genius at work across millennia, crafting that story so that it has almost an infinite depth.
The truth of science is the truth that gets us to the moon.
And I don't think it makes any difference.
It doesn't make a difference whether it was divinely inspired or whether it evolved.
Truth is unified. And what that's going to mean eventually is that the world of value and the world of fact coincide in some manner that we don't yet understand.
You've analogized the dragon fight to
well,
fighting,
how many dragons have
Satan.
you overcome in your life?